What's the most disturbing secret you've been told? As a young teenager, one of my closest female friend was raped by her cousin, who was the same age as her, multiple times over the course of 3 years. Eventually her father found out about this, and a trial happened. That cousin ended up having nothing much more than a fine and kind of a warning, we watch over you now. This guy's now on the run to compete in the next Olympic Games. And my friend is ducking broken from the inside and barely able to trust males. I'm one of the few persons outside of the family who knows. Girl I knew had just gotten fired from her job and was planning on jumping off a bridge. The job meant everything to her. I talked to her over 4 hours on the phone pleading with her, and she eventually decided not to jump. So she went home and shot herself instead. When I was about 10 years old, my mom told me that when she was 12 years old, she was in bed at night. She lived in Puerto Rico. She heard her mom and dad arguing in the kitchen. Her dad might have been drunk. I don't recall if my mom said she heard her mom screaming and then go silent. Her dad had stabbed her mom to death. He went to prison. My mom and her siblings got adopted out to other families. A co-worker told me her second child wasn't her husband's. Did not need that information. It was in 6th grade, and I was about 11 years old at the time. A girl in my class had been missing from school for quite a while. We asked our teacher what the problem was, but she refused to answer. We then kind of just let it slide and didn't think about it anymore. A few weeks later, there was a story in the news about a 12-year-old girl who had been impregnated by a 39-year-old man. We joked around saying that it was probably her, until she finally came to class one morning and told everyone that it was true. I have literally never seen a classroom that silent before in my life. Dad introduced me to his girlfriend when I was 15 years old. Now, don't tell your mama. Apostrophe. Shit. Same bro. Dad said it was his nurse, the one who treats his sadness. Left me in the mall's computer cafe the whole day, and today I realized he probably did some nasty shit with that woman. In 1994, an now retired judge told me he and 2 childhood friends were responsible for the accidental death of a classmate down by a creek where they were playing one day. He had pretty much kept it to himself for a lifetime. May have had a role to play in his career choice. I've definitely heard of people going into law enforcement because of accidents early on in life that messed with their heads. Sometimes experiences like that can really push a person to want to do more good for the world. A guy I hooked up with in college had a breakdown when we were blackout drunk and essentially admitted to killing a guy who had taken advantage of his little sister and burying the body. He was a total wiener of a guy who was always trying to hype himself up and exaggerate to be a bigger, better, manlier person, so I didn't think much of it at the time. The timing would have made him a teenager and the man a full-fledged adult. It just felt like another bullshit story he was always telling. But sometimes I think back and wonder if there's any truth to it. My classmate in high school, I thought he was pretty weird, but also a nice guy. Turned out has bipolar, and he manages it with medication. But one time he was off it, and he lost control in an argument with his little brother. He ended up beating the living crap out of the poor kid. Once he regained his senses and realized what he did, he tried to kill himself. I'm not sure how. He didn't specify. His dad was also an abusive drunk douchebag who occasionally beat him up. He told the story pretty calmly. I really hope he's doing much better now. My friend was telling me about how jealous she was of her boyfriend spending time with one of his female cousins instead of her. I mean, that's his family though. Don't you think you're being a bit psycho getting jealous of him spending time with his own cousin? Well, he ducked his other one. I'm sorry. What? Question mark? Exclamation mark. Turns out he'd lost his virginity to a different female cousin when they were teenagers. My aunt, who I don't speak to anymore, was talking to me about my granddad who died when I was 2, saying how he loved taking me to the park and hanging out with me and stuff like that when she was babysitting me. My mum then explained to me a few years later that he was a pedophile and had done stuff to all of his kids and my aunt's daughter, but that he wasn't ever allowed near me. So basically, My aunt used to let my granddad, who was a pedophile, hang out and let me stay with him for a day without my parents ever knowing. Edit. I just wanted to add on and answer some questions. I haven't told my mum, but I've debated it sometimes. I realized that she had a fear that something like she'd experienced would happen to me, and she said that it would destroy her because she said that she would basically become her mother by letting it happen without her knowing. I don't really know for sure why my aunt allowed it to happen, but she told me that she suffered from MPD and sees a therapist because of what happened to her. But when she moved out, she forced herself to forget, I guess, and denied what my mum and another aunt were saying. My mum told me that she thinks that she still loved their dad and kept him in her life was because she thought that he loved her because of what he'd done. Bit creepy though. I don't know if anything ever happened to me because I was too young to remember between being born and 2 years old, and I don't know how I'd know if I want to know. I've been through a lot slightly similar situations, basically sexual assault, and that's already messed me up mentally quite a bit. So I don't know if I found out that something actually did happen. Semicolon. Thanks guys for the comments. I didn't actually think that anyone would actually read it, let alone comment. I've never spoken to anyone about what happened / cold have happened, and I think I've relieved the tension slightly that it's caused me, but I'm confident now that my grandmother and aunt are batshit ducking crazy. This girl I worked with over the summer told me how she burnt down her high school, and we worked at a summer camp. None of the parents knew the girl watching their kids was a ducking arsonist. My father had 6 children from 4 different women. One he knocked up when he was married to his first wife. He put the child up for adoption in secret, so his wife wouldn't know. The only people who knew were his mom and dad and the mother of the child's family. He lied to his current wife about the child when his second wife found the papers in his office while they were going through a divorce. 30 years later, 23 and reunited all, and he found out quickly the secret wasn't really so secret. Everyone in the family knew and just didn't say anything. The child put up for adoption was me. What really sucks for him is, if he had just been open about it, it may have saved him many years of pain. I've told the story on here before, but a girl I worked with once told me about her first love. They dated for a while, fell madly in love, and lost their virginities to each other. Her family situation was weird. Her parents weren't married, but when her dad was in town, her parents were a couple, and when he wasn't they weren't. Well, one of the times that he was in town, she introduced him to her boyfriend. They got along and got to talking, and he asked about the kid's family. After the kid went home, her dad told her she couldn't see him anymore. Turns out he was the kid's father. She'd unknowingly fallen in love with and lost her virginity to her half-brother. And yes, I know this also happened on an episode of House. I was told this story back in '99 before that show was a thing. I found it out myself. My immediate older sister is cheating on her husband with my oldest sister's husband. Both the couple seem to be in a happy and healthy marriage with kids. WTF. Edit. Sorry for keeping you guys hanging. Now to answer your questions. No, they do not know that I know. And yes, we do see them on family occasions. My cheating sister is always on her phone. Doesn't attend late night family meetings between cousins. And one night I saw her chatting. It was really late. So next day I check her phone. I wish I didn't. And bam. Wall of romantic and intimate texts. Seems like they masturbate on video calls and exchange pictures and videos. Can't say for sure if they have slept yet, but my sister is very eager to. I just told my younger brother and my fiance only was almost about to spill it out to my mom, but didn't want to ruin 2 families. Also, my sister acts like a saint in front of us. Also, the cheating brother-in-law is kinda asshole to us, so me, my brother and my cousins don't like him. Cheating sister pretends to dislike him in front of us, but the chat says otherwise. I always thought my aunt, who suffers from a bit of depression and anxiety, never had children because of depression and anxiety. However, I managed to piece some things together. I was with her last month and we were talking about life and catching up. I'm finally an adult, so we talked more about life in general. Got onto the topic of religion. She had later revealed to me that she was gang raped by a few Catholic boys at her church, which is why she left religion. I later asked my mother, her sister, about it, and I come to find out a really morbid story. Semicolon. It's a long story, but I will tell. Doctorate. Semicolon. My aunt was raped at night in a park. She was pregnant and sent off to another state by my grandparents for her senior year of high school. She had the child, but a family adopted the child. My aunt returned to her home state. 6 years later, my mom was sitting at the bar my aunt was bartending at, noticed my aunt was off. My aunt received a letter from the adopted child's family notifying her that her child was killed in a car accident that day. Only my mother, my aunt and my grandparents were aware of this, as they kept it under the radar from the entire family. Now I know, and honestly wish I hadn't. Semicolon. I always thought my aunt was moody, but now I can understand why. I wish I could do something for her. Edit. This was over 30 years ago, which is why I say I wish I could do something for her. She didn't tell me details past the rape story. My mother told me the rest. So clearly she has been holding this in for almost her entire life and doesn't want people to know. I live extremely far away from my aunt as well. It's not like I can just show up at her doorstep. This is something where I told myself to tread lightly. I see her once every few years. While I'm close with her, I'm in no position to help with her grievance process other than to see her every couple of years. I lost 2 of my good friends from high school, and I prefer to never be asked about it because I've accepted the way I handle those losses years later. Obviously, if she was having life-threatening issues over this, I would intervene, but my aunt is stable. Thank you for your concerns, everyone. I wish she could see the comments and support, but I think I'd be opening a can of worms that would cause a family meltdown. Some things are better left unsaid and untouched. She does not know that I know. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.